Good afternoon, everyone. My name is CaSandra Wiley Jackson. I am an academic recovery advisor for the university. And today we are going to talk about some study skills, just a few tips that I have found to help students be a little more successful. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And if you have any questions, if you could let me know at the end. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, bear with me just a moment. Okay, study skills. So hold on, I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, reading to comprehend. What we want to talk about with reading, first of all, you don't want to put off reading to the last minute. You don't want to wait to read a chapter that you know you have a test coming up to the last minute. So you want to start basically as soon as you know that you're going to need to read this chapter. And when you're reading, you want to read for comprehension. You don't want to just read the chapter to say you read it. You want to make sure, excuse me, that you are retaining the information. When reading over a chapter, it's kind of helpful if you read it more than once. You want to notice boldface headings and subheadings, and also pay attention to key concepts, and skim over the graphs and charts that you see in the chapter. These are all beneficial. And you want to start, when you start reading the chapter, you want to go ahead and start thinking about questions that you may have, to kind of answer the question in your reading. You also want to take notes. Note taking is going to be very beneficial when you're reading. Jot down things that are in bold, even definitions, things that you think are key points that you're reading. Also, when you're taking note cards, you don't want to write down everything. You want to paraphrase as much as possible. And you may even come up with some acronyms that may help you to remember these things also. When you're in a class and a professor is lecturing, you also want to make sure that you jot down ideas that the professor repeats. A lot of times, if a professor's talking, they may say, you want to make sure you remember this, or this will be on the test. Even for the online classes, a lot of times the professor will highlight or put asterisks by keynotes that you want to make sure that you know for the test. And most of the books, even if you are renting, allow you to highlight in the book. So you definitely want to be able to highlight in your book if you have, if you have a hard copy book, or also the good thing is for the ebooks, you can also highlight in those now also. And you want to make sure you review your notes and make sure you can understand what you wrote down, or if you need to rewrite them. Sometimes if you're writing them in class, you may have to go back and actually review those notes and maybe rewrite them sometimes. For note taking, like I said, you want to reduce it. You don't want to write everything. If your professor allows you to record, I know when I was in undergrad, I recorded my classes so that I could go back and make sure I wrote my notes properly. And also it allows you to, for people that learn by hearing and that are visual, you're hearing it again as well as writing it, and it kind of helps you to remember it. You want to make sure that when you're looking at your note cards, you can recite back what is on that note card. You don't want to be able to just read the note card, but you want to know that you actually know it. And one little tip that helps is maybe writing the definition or what it is that you're trying to remember on one side, and write the answer on the back side so that it's not there together, because you don't want to get in the habit of just reading something that's on the card. You want to actually know that you know it. And that's how you reflect, just reflecting back over it to make sure that you do in fact know it. and again, review more than once. You want to make sure that you go over the note cards more than one time. For test taking or getting prepared for the test, I like to make flashcards, again, with the note cards, writing the definition or whatever the question is on one side and the answer on the other. You may even organize your notes into categories. And when you're actually getting to the test, you want to preview over the test, read the questions thoroughly. I know sometimes if you are taking a test in D2L, you can't necessarily look ahead. Sometimes it depends on how the professor has it set up, but sometimes you can actually look at all the questions before you actually start answering. But you want to make sure you read the questions thoroughly. When you are studying for the test, it helps for some people to tell and teach what you know to someone else. Maybe you have a study partner or a friend that's helping you study, or that you're studying together. If you can explain to them what you've learned, you know, it's a way of practice and also a way to kind of remember what you are learning. But when you're on that test and you are, say it's multiple choice, you want to read it thoroughly, read through it, and try to eliminate the answers that you know are incorrect. For instance, if it's A, B, C, D, typically 2 of them are totally off base and you know they're incorrect. Go ahead and eliminate those. And then the 2 that are kind of close or kind of the answer, you want to read it thoroughly again and just kind of make sure that the question is answered in that answer. And that kind of helps to eliminate. And if you can look ahead and read over the entire test, you want to go back to the difficult questions last, especially if it's a time test. You want to be able to answer what you know first, and the ones that are going to take a little bit more time, hopefully you can get to those. Any questions so far? Okay, I take that as a no. That is pretty much everything that I kind of had. I know I went kind of fast. I'm really nervous, but the main thing is the keynotes are not to wait till the last minute, not to just put anything down. Thank you, Summer. You want to make sure that you're not waiting till the last minute to read it. Read any of the reading assignments and make those notes while you are reading your reading assignment. And also, if you are if you have questions when you're reading, go ahead and jot down notes so that you can actually talk to your professor and get those answered before the time of the test. It's also a good practice. Some people, like I said, I'm a fan of note cards, but some people like to use blank pieces of paper, and they may write down, you know, whatever, especially if it's like a terminology quiz or something. They may write down the definition on one side and write down or leave the answer off, and just kind of see how many of those they can answer without looking back at their notes or without having the answer right there. The main thing I think in retaining is going to be repetition, just kind of going over those notes as much as possible. And some people will like to say that they study better with music and things like that. I really suggest doing it in a quiet place where you really are concentrating on what you're doing and not having that white noise in the background, because sometimes we're really listening to the white noise versus actually listening or retaining what we're doing. Mary Catherine, do you have any questions?
I do. What's the best kind of study environment? Like what?
Okay, so in my opinion, and this is my opinion and what works better, but I like a quiet environment where I'm off to myself. For instance, I don't want to go hang out at the UC where there's so much going on and say I'm studying for a test. So if I live alone, or if you live alone, if you can just kind of get off to a quiet space, turn the TV off, turn the music off, I think you retain better when it's quiet. And you also, even if you have a study group, if you're doing a group thing, maybe go to the library. It's still quiet, well, depending on what level of the library you're on, because I did try that a couple of times. But being in the study area that's distraction free. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if no one else has any other questions, I guess that's it. Thank you guys for participating today.
Thank you.
Thank you.